Hi, we're back. I'm Elizabeth.
I'm Cole.
And so this week is actually a super important week in Christianity. It's Holy Week. And
What is Holy Week?
Holy Week is the week leading up to Jesus' death and then resurrection. And we're like in the middle of it. And like today I was just reading, and like today's Wednesday, and it's the day that like Mary Magdalene is, Mary of Magdalene is technically what she's called, but we just call her Mary Magdalene. She's actually like breaking the oil right now that the disciples were like, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. Like, what are you doing?
I think it's funny that Judas was one of them.
And it's like that money, they were like, that money could have been used to feed the poor or so many other things. Like it was so much salary to them. And Jesus was like, no, like she's blessing me. You don't understand. Because Jesus had not washed the disciples' feet yet at this point.
He said, you'll always have the poor, but you won't always have me.
Yeah. And so Jesus had not washed their feet, had not done that servanthood act yet for the disciples. And Mary Magdalene was just washing Jesus' feet. And I think that is such like a humbling thing. And honestly, like she was healed from like her demonic spirits and being a prostitute and all that. But I also think that moment was also so healing for her to know that like she was worthy to like wash Jesus' feet. And like she knew it needed to be done. Like it doesn't really talk about like why she did it. She just knew it needs to be done. And then later we see Jesus do the same things with the disciples. He washes their feet. And it's just so amazing. And then like you move in, because this Sunday was Palm Sunday. So, you know, they laid down the palm branches. Jesus rode in on the donkey. And that's when the Jewish people were like, oh, this is it. This is where Jesus saves us. Like, it's going to go down exactly how we think. But at the same time, like, Judas is also going to have dinner with Jesus. He's going to have the Last Supper. And Last Supper for Christianity, if you don't know, is Jesus broke bread and he said, this is my body. Take of it and eat. And this is my blood in wine form. Take of it and drink. And he said, do this in remembrance of me. And he was saying, do it in remembrance of what I did, because I am going to shed the blood for you. I am going to break my body for you. So you don't have to no longer sacrifice animals. You no longer have to do any of this. You just have to have me in like a relationship. And so, and while Jesus was like washing their feet, he knew that Peter was going to deny him 3 times. And he literally called him out. He's like, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. And Peter was like, me? Nah, bruh. And he was like, one of you will betray me. And like, I think it's so important to note, Jesus gave the disciples a chance to prove him wrong. He like pre-warned them. He's like, you're going to do this. So like, you're pre-warned. There you go. It's like a little kid. That stove's hot. Don't touch it. I know better.
Is it really hot though?
That was the disciples. Are you sure, Jesus? Mr. All-Knowing, Almighty, All-Powerful. And so Friday comes the crucifixion. And that is like, even being a Christian my whole life, that is still something that like rocks me so hard to my core. That Jesus like went through all of that. Like, because you read, like they stuck thorns into his head and like they went through. They ripped out his beard. They spit on him. They hit him 39 times, I think, because a 40th would be considered too much and too deadly. They hit him 39 times with a
Cat of 9 tails.
Yeah, cat of 9 tails. Which, if you don't know what that is, back in the day, it's like a whip with rocks and.
It's a leather switch, and they usually got like blades or pokey things on the end of
So
the
they
leather.
rip off flesh and rocks. And if you don't know, like Roman crucifixion was like one of the hardest things people had to go through back then.
It's the worst punishment.
Yeah, known to them. And then Jesus goes in the tomb, and it looks so.
After he dies for hanging on a cross.
When he draws his final breath.
Yeah.
And he goes in a tomb, and you just, like, I can't even imagine. Like, I just want to cry right now just thinking about it, because it is, like, it was such an amazing gift that he didn't have to give, but he, like, gladly gave it. And I think about, like, the people that, like, don't know that gift, don't know, like, how freeing that is to, like, know him. Like, he's like, just come, just be a part. And then Sunday obviously is going to come, and Jesus is going to come, and he's going to tell the disciples, like, wait for me. And now there's 11, because Judas ended up committing suicide for betraying Jesus. He ended up taking his own life. So now there's 11 of them, and they're sitting in this upper room, and they're just waiting. And that's what Jesus said, do, just wait. Like, you're going to know. And then he came in, and he's like, because obviously, like, Mary Magdalene sees him at the tomb, and she's like, oh my gosh, Jesus. Or an angel. Like, she's the first person that knows he's resurrected. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, wow. And then he comes and he's like, fill the holes in my hands. Like, you walked with me for 3 to 3.5 years, and you still are struggling to believe, like, fill the holes in my hand. It truly is me. And then he appeared to 500 people at one time, and he did several other things, and then he ascended to heaven. And then it was like, well, it wasn't it, because then, like, Peter went on to be, like, the person that he built his church on. Mm-hmm. You kind of, after Jesus just ascends to heaven, you just kind of see all the disciples spread out. And that's kind of like the end of it. Like, that's like, bam, Jesus.
Doing what Jesus told him to do.
Yeah, he's like, go and make disciples. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. So, yeah. That is not what this video was, like, supposed to be at all, but I just started talking about it. I don't know why. So, yeah, like, one thing, like, 2, like, pieces of, like, movie advice I'm going to give you. Like, if you're like, watching this, you're like, I'm skeptical, like, I don't believe this. Well, read it in the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all talk about it.
Not really something you can skip.
And then if you're still reading, you're like, I don't know, like, what's the science behind this? A really great movie, I do, like, give a trigger, like, warning, because it is super hard to watch, is Passion of Christ. It is in Hebrew, so there's also that. But you just see, like,
There's subtitles.
Yeah, you see the whole, like, this week just play out in this movie, and Mel Gibson did a phenomenal job.
The 3 days.
And, like, you just see, like, the confusion, the happiness, the sadness, the anger, the what if. You just see it all play out. And then another really great movie, if you're like, I'm still skeptical, is, what's that movie I had you watch? Case for Christ. And that actually goes into, like, the science of Jesus' crucifixion. And how, like, why would somebody die for a lie? Like, why would Jesus not be like, no, I never said any of that? Like, because everybody said he was lying. Like, they're like, he's a liar. Why would you die for a lie? Like, if you didn't believe it 100%, why would you go to the cross and do all that? So, Passion of Christ, like, gives a lot of, like, scientific details about Jesus.
Passion of Christ depicts it very well, very historically accurate.
Yes, Passion of Christ is, like, very accurate and very hard, because you actually get to see him being beat. Where Case for Christ is about this family in the 60s or 70s or 80s, somewhere in those 3 decades.
70s.
They're atheist, and this man, his wife, gets saved. They all 3 start out as atheist, and then the wife converts over to Christianity, and she's just working on her husband becoming a Christian. And then so he goes on this, like, mission to prove that Jesus is, like, never happened.
And he wants to prove her wrong.
And at the end, he's
Don't
like,
spoil it, though.
okay, I can't spoil it, but it's so good. Like, the science in it, and, like, when he goes into that museum, the, like, church museum place, and he's talking to the one man in the white lab coat, I was just like, wow, that's, like, all you honestly need to watch. But the movie is, like, so phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I don't really have anything else to add. But, yeah, it's, like, a super sad week for Christians. but also like a super happy
I was
week.
gonna say, I wouldn't say, I mean, sad. Yes,
It's sad
but
that like, to me it's sad that like his own people, they were like, oh, you didn't save us how we thought you were going to do it? Crucify him, send him away. But then,
that's sad, but I'd say there's more to be happy about.
yeah, but then like the end, we're going to be in heaven forever. Like, this world truly doesn't matter. All that matters is getting more people to heaven, making it as packed as possible. So yeah. Can you look in your Bible so that I can tell him where like it is in one of the Gospels? So I can tell him at least where to read from. He went to Mark, if you could guess it.
He knew it was happening.
He is risen, Jesus is buried. Jesus' face is Pilate.
So,
Okay, one second.
oh, you want to start at Pilate?
I know, but 1 second. They might want to,
Or you want to start at
because he's praying in the garden. Yeah. The plot to kill Jesus.
Oh.
Okay, so you start in Mark 14, and it's the plot to kill Jesus. That's where Judas is planning. They're all planning. All these Pharisees, they're planning. They're like, yeah, we're going to take him down. And then read a lot. Then go to 15. 16 is he is risen. Spoilers. And then you're in Luke. Then you start Luke. So read from 14 to the end of Mark. So, yeah, that's all I got. Got anything?
No.